The day I got laid off, my system uptime dashboard was still glowing a perfect 100%. No red alerts, no server hiccups, no one crying in Slack about batch failures or report lags. It was beautiful, immaculate, and entirely the reason they shoved me out like a Craigslist couch during a divorce. You've done an excellent job, Erica, HR cooed like she was putting a kitten to sleep. Truly, you've made everything so efficient that, well, there's just not enough work to justify your position anymore. I stared at her. I mean, really stared, like maybe if I looked hard enough, I'd find the punchline tattooed under her bob haircut. 6 years. 6 years I'd been the duct tape and digital prayers holding this dump together. Bash scripts that spun up compliance reports in seconds. Batch jobs that processed payroll faster than the actual accountants. An alert system so finely tuned it pinged a dev smartwatch before their pipeline failed. But no, I was too good at my job. I'd made it look easy, seamless, effortless, and now I was being thanked for my contributions by being turned into a goddamn cost-saving measure. By the way, if this story feels like it's been ripped from your own cubicle nightmares, do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button. Help me hit my first 10,000 followers so I can keep dragging corporate nonsense into the light, one quiet act of revenge at a time. Anyway, back to the bloodbath. The new COO, Jason, fresh off some MBA clown car, had shown up 3 months prior. He wore too tight shirts, weaponized buzzwords, and an ego inflated by LinkedIn likes. One of those guys who thinks synergy is a personality trait. During his first town hall, he told us, while balancing his artisanal cold brew on the mic stand, if a system runs itself, we don't need a babysitter. Cool, Jason, guess what? You just fired the babysitter and handed the nursery over to the blender. He didn't understand infrastructure. He didn't want to. To him, my scripts weren't elegant, invisible safeguards, they were receipts for dead weight. What no one realized was how many of those scripts had teeth. Not malicious, not dangerous, just fragile, like leaving a bowl balanced on the fridge. Bump the door wrong, it crashes. Look away for too long, say goodbye to your leftovers and the dog's peace of mind. Take the backup handler. I built it after our outsourced vendor failed to restore 2 years of archived emails. I coded a new system in a weekend, wrapped it in an autodoc tool that generated HTML manuals nobody ever read. It even emailed a summary to IT once a week. Buried in that doc on page 14 under manual execution flags was a single line. Bypass auto equals true, disables scheduled backups unless flag is toggled manually. It was there. Documented, transparent. It even had a note, use only when maintenance requires temporary suspension. Reset ASAP, nobody ever used it. Nobody even knew it was set to true because I set it once during a dry run. And then they laid me off without reviewing a single configuration. My access didn't vanish immediately. Their offboarding checklist, crafted by someone who thought Jira was a Pokemon, revoked privileges in stages. HR assumed IT would pull me. IT assumed HR would handle it. Meanwhile, I still had access to every server that ran my scripts because no one remembered which credentials they piggybacked off. I had just enough time to walk out clean, professional, and invisible. I even brought donuts on my last day. Legacy doesn't mean old, I told them with a smile. It means it outlived the people who understood it. They all laughed. The new guy, Troy maybe, asked if I had any advice. Read the documentation, I said. It's all there. He gave me a thumbs up, didn't even write it down. I packed my bag, tossed my badge in the collection box like I was quitting a gym I never went to, and walked out into a cold January wind that felt like freedom wrapped in static. My face was calm, my pulse steady, but inside, I was a matchbook with one stick left and someone just struck it. It was a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. Tuesdays are the beige wallpaper of betrayal. You don't expect decapitation before lunch on a weekday that bland, but there I was, summoned to conference room C like a dog being called in from the yard. No subject line, just quick sync I already knew. The HR rep was new, young, still believed in phrases like work-life balance and company culture. She greeted me with that damp, forced smile they teach in HR school, like she was about to offer me a mint and a hug instead of a bullet. Erica, thanks for coming in. First, I want to say we're so impressed by what you've done here. Ah, the eulogy tone. You've streamlined over a dozen systems, removed redundancies, and, frankly, created something really beautiful. And there it is. The guillotine clanks into place. You've essentially automated yourself out of relevance. I blinked. Automated myself out of relevance. Like I was a dishwasher that cleaned too well and made the chef feel bad. Excuse me, I said, keeping my voice level, just the right shade of polite disbelief. She gave a rehearsed little head tilt. It's a good problem, really. You built systems that maintain themselves. You've essentially completed your project. I let out a short laugh. I wasn't aware my career had a deliverable. She flinched, probably sensing I was about to pivot from professional to burning this place down with my eyes. So she reached for the corporate pacifier. Now, I do want to clarify this isn't technically a termination. You haven't been fired. You fulfilled your objectives and well. With no new scope identified, no new scope. Like I was some overpaid Excel formula that spit out no value if not constantly fed. So, no severance? I asked just to confirm the punchline. She folded her hands, suddenly very interested in her own cuticles. Since this isn't classified as a dismissal, there's no severance package outlined under the existing terms. Existing terms. Cute. I nodded, smiled, even made a joke. Well, guess this is what happens when you design yourself out of the apocalypse. She didn't get it, but she laughed anyway, one of those polite, brittle little noises that echoes off glass walls like a ghost's cough. They handed me an exit packet printed in Comic Sans. Swear to God, like my 6 years of labor deserved the typographic equivalent of a fart noise. Of course, she added, your access will be disabled shortly. IT has the handover list. Shortly, which meant not yet, which meant opportunity. See, the beauty of quiet infrastructure work, the real magic, is no one remembers how you hook things up. They just know it works. My scripts ran under service accounts I'd provisioned myself. Documentation was on the backlog. Credentials were stored in encrypted blobs only I decrypted, on machines only I maintained. They could remove me from the building. But the building still whispered my name. As I walked out, packet in hand, dignity clinging to the corners like lint, I passed Jason in the hallway. He gave me a tight smile. No hard feelings, Erica. The system's in good hands now, of course, I said. I'm sure it'll run itself. He chuckled, oblivious. But deep inside, a door slammed shut, and behind it, something started to coil. Humiliation, when compressed long enough, starts to crystallize. It stops weeping and starts thinking. Planning, it stops being hurt and starts becoming math. It wanted a clean-up script. One last little thing before I packed up my cactus and left them to their spreadsheet gods. We just need a quick wrap-up utility, Troy said. Troy, the human post-it note. Barely out of diapers and already mansplaining log rotation like he invented Bash. Something to archive logs, clear out temp directories, tidy up dangling configs, basically a digital janitor pass. A symbolic gesture, a pat on the head before exile. Final feather in the cap of the woman who made herself obsolete. Sure, I said, smiling like a waitress who's just been told to smile more. I spent the morning writing it, even brought my own coffee in a thermos that said I void warranties. They thought it was ironic. It wasn't. The script was a thing of beauty, commented, modular, elegant enough to make a Linux kernel blush. And tucked inside, right where no one would ever look unless they really knew what they were doing, was a loop, a conditional, technically, no errors, no warnings, just a soft whisper in the logs, backup flag not set, skipping. Looked like everything executed cleanly. Log cleanup, white heavy checkmark temp clear, white heavy checkmark backups, well, they'd look like they ran, timestamps updated, output folder touched, but the data, not a byte copied. It wasn't sabotage, it was conditional logic. Documented, traceable. Signed off in the pull request by Troy himself, who had the attention span of a fruit fly on Monster Energy. And the cherry on top? A tiny cron job nested inside a nested config repo. It checked the flag every week just in case someone got smart and turned it on. If the flag didn't exist, it just kept skipping. Quietly, invisibly, like a priest ignoring sin in confessional. I handed the repo to Troy with a laminated handover checklist. He beamed. You really left us in a good place, he said, eyes skimming my readme without understanding a damn word. I said. Even Jason stopped by, clapped me on the shoulder like we were frat brothers and he didn't just kick me out of the airlock. Erica, seriously, thank you. You left a legacy here. People will be using your scripts for years. Let's hope they know how, I said. He laughed, thought I was being humble. There were handshakes, awkward hugs, cards signed with things like you're a rock star, and don't be a stranger, which I immediately tossed in the trash outside. Legacy? Sure, but legacies rot too when you don't water them, and they just fired the last gardener. As I shut down my workstation, I glanced once, just once, at the timestamp in /etc/cron d/cleanup routine. First trigger in 30 days. Right after month-end backup retention hits its purge threshold. Perfect. I logged out. Walked out, no tears, no rage. Just the clean, surgical silence of someone who's already 10 moves ahead and sharpening the scalpel. The farewell script was signed, sealed, and deployed, and the clock was ticking. The silence after a clean escape hits different. No Slack pings, no Monday all hands. No fake birthdays with sheet cake that tastes like recycled toner. Just the hum of my own server rack in my living room and the occasional meow from Poe, a cat with trust issues and a permanent judgmental squint. I didn't waste time. 3 weeks after my non-termination, I filed the paperwork for my LLC. Named it Zero Flag Consulting, a little nod to the script clause that was now quietly disarming an entire Fortune 500 backup framework like a sleeping landmine. The irony kept me warm at night. My first client? One of my old employer's competitors. Let's call them Greystone Finance. Bit stodgy, a bit paranoid, but rich with legacy systems and terrified of becoming the next cautionary tale on Wired. We met in a beige boardroom that smelled like expired ambition. I wore a navy blazer and smiled like I hadn't just been corporate roadkill. Their CIO leaned in, fingertips steepled. We're told you understand risk intimately. I lived inside it for 6 years, I said. I know where people get lazy. Especially with backups. He nodded like I'd just recited the Dead Sea Scrolls. They brought me on for a 60-day audit. I ended up rewriting half their backup architecture and flagging 6 separate points of silent failure. All of it logged, all of it redundant, triple-checked, human-proof. By month's end, I had a glowing testimonial, a retainer, and a private Slack channel named #ericafixazol. Satisfaction? Yeah, it crept in. Not loud, just a low purr. Like the hum of servers doing exactly what they're told. I was earning triple my old salary, setting my own hours, drinking coffee that didn't taste like burnt apologies. But vengeance? That lived under the floorboards, still twitching, still whispering. One afternoon, while updating retention policies for Greystone's HR logs, I got a notification on my professional LinkedIn. A post from my former employer, glossy graphic, corporate font, smug blue and gray color palette that says, "We believe in efficiency until we don't." Celebrating streamlined ops. Thanks to internal innovation and strong leadership, we've optimized our systems and reduced operational overhead by 28%. Excited for what's ahead. There was a photo of Jason, smiling like a man who just found a 20 in his khakis. Strong leadership, I muttered, sipping my coffee. Strong like two-ply toilet paper. They didn't name me. Of course not, I was a ghost, a set of scripts, a whisper in the repo. But I was the 28%, and that 28%, that was the space between stable infrastructure and catastrophic loss. I saved the post, not out of spite, more like documentation, a progress marker. Exhibit A, meanwhile, my own calendar filled up. Word got out. Quietly, deliberately. People like me don't shout, we circulate. She's the one who tells you what your CTO won't. She builds systems that survive vacation brain. Her alerts catch fire before the fire starts. They weren't wrong. My invoices were clean. My code was cleaner. And every time I typed a retention policy or built a backup plan, I remembered that little flag in /etc/sysconfig, the one still quietly blinking like a forgotten lighthouse. 30 days, they didn't know it yet. They were already running on borrowed time. And I was right on schedule. On day 29, the system started coughing. It was small at first. Just a weird Slack thread in the DevOps channel, buried between some intern asking where the bathroom keys were and someone arguing about Jira ticket colors. Anyone know why the QA logs from last week are empty? No one answered for 6 hours. Then Troy, bless his gluten-free, half-zipped Patagonia soul, chimed in, ignore it. The system auto-manages. Might just be pruning. Might just be pruning. That phrase, man, like digital necrosis is just a little spring cleaning. I could see the reply in his tone, smug, distracted, probably typing one-handed while sipping a turmeric latte. Meanwhile, /var/log/transactions had already quietly eaten its own tail and burped out a cheerful no entries found. I didn't say anything, obviously. Just watched. Good ghost never knocks before the haunting. See, I'd left behind something deceptively delicate. That hidden cron job I planted, it wasn't malicious, it was just honest, it followed orders. Every 7 days it checked for the backup flag. If the flag wasn't set, it skipped, logged the skip, patted itself on the back, and moved on. No drama, no errors, just obedience. And on day 29, it had done what it always did, nothing. But now the cracks were showing. Not enough to panic yet. One department, something in legal ops, started seeing missing data. Audit trails that ended mid-sentence. Metadata that pointed to ghosts. I think the archive sync is off, their team lead posted. Give it an hour. These things resolve, someone replied. These things resolve. Like data loss is just a phase, like puberty or crypto. Meanwhile, I sat in my studio/office, sipping cold brew, listening to lo-fi jazz while I combed through Greystone's financial redundancy matrix. I caught wind of the issue through a former coworker's Twitter alt account. Something cryptic about phantom logs and bad moon rising. I cracked a smile, couldn't help it. You ever hear the sound of denial tightening? It's quiet, like shoelaces before a sprint you don't know you're in. And inside that building, you could almost feel the air get heavier, that kind of pressure you get before a thunderstorm hits, when everyone's pretending the clouds don't look angry yet. Someone in operations reopened an old Jira ticket about intermittent discrepancies. They closed it 10 minutes later with the note, couldn't reproduce. Possibly temporary. Sure, buddy. And my ex just accidentally logged into Tinder during therapy. I pictured Jason scrolling through his dashboard, seeing all those beautiful green check marks, blissfully unaware that underneath them, the system was hollowing itself out like a termite buffet. Because here's the thing about automated integrity, it's only as good as the human memory maintaining it. And they'd fired the one human who remembered how it actually worked. Now, while they were busy celebrating streamlined ops, the archive processes had quietly skipped 29 times. No alarms, no error states, just skipped. Because that's what the condition said. The final 30-day retention cycle was already mid-countdown, and in a few short hours, the purge script would run right on schedule. A simple, efficient, unremarkable execution, one that would delete everything they thought they were still protecting. Transaction histories, HR incident logs, payroll backups, configurations, DNS maps, legal document revisions, gone, and no one would even know it happened until they went looking. Tick, tick, tick. It hit just past midnight. The system did exactly what it was told to do. Nothing more, nothing less. No fireworks, no klaxons, just the quiet precision of logic unfolding like a guillotine. At 12:01 a.m., the final retention job ran, At 12:02, slash backup slash monthly slash finance slash was empty. By 12:03, slash snapshot slash legal slash dropped into non-existence like a body into a river. At 12:05, HR tried to access a historical payroll report, got a 404. By 12:06, someone opened a ticket, data missing from archive. By 12:08, panic had an official Slack channel. It didn't hit all at once. It was more like a domino fall, slow and methodical, each department discovering their slice of hell with escalating disbelief. Accounting couldn't restore Q1 audit trails. HR couldn't pull performance reports for compliance checks. Legal tried opening a contract review from last month and got a blank folder, timestamped but empty. The ops team thought it was a mount issue, then a permission issue, then a sync issue, then a someone must have accidentally deleted something issue. But nothing had been deleted, not in the traditional sense. It had been skipped, every week, for 30 days. By 12:17, the incident response team was fully activated. Half of them still in pajamas, logging into war rooms from their home offices with bloodshot eyes and half-drunk Red Bulls. At 12:23, someone finally pinged the IT director. He'd been golfing the day they laid me off. Didn't even send a goodbye email. But now he was the one standing in the middle of the digital crime scene, sweating through his undershirt and whispering Jesus Christ every third breath. I wasn't watching live, obviously, but I didn't have to. I knew how this unfolded. I'd seen it in dry runs, stress tests, simulation environments. Except this time it wasn't a test. They found the script around 12:41. The cleanup SH file, documented, signed off, timestamped, reviewed. They ran it through 3 different threat scanners. Nada. They pulled it into a sandbox, still nothing. It wasn't malicious, it was just elegantly incomplete. One of the engineers, probably Troy, poor bastard, finally noticed the conditional. That's it. No sabotage, no payload, no ransomware, just logic. Simple, cold-blooded logic. A choice unmade, a flag unset. A silence no one questioned. And now, their data was gone, all of it, not overwritten, not encrypted, just quietly unpreserved. Auto-purged by the same policies they praised as efficient. What was once living infrastructure was now just bone, dust, and denial. At 1:03 a.m., someone reportedly vomited. IT director, according to the Slack logs a friend leaked me, right there at his desk, threw up on his keyboard during the emergency call. They brought in an external recovery firm by 2:00 a.m., but there was nothing to recover. The RAID arrays were intact. Storage was healthy. Nothing had crashed. It had all been intentionally bypassed by a system they greenlit, praised, and signed off on. By 3:00 a.m., a non-zero number of employees had locked their social media and scrubbed their LinkedIns. Jason, nowhere to be seen, and Erica, I was asleep. Soundly. Poe curled beside me, purring like he'd just avenged a ghost. There's a specific kind of silence that follows a catastrophe no one understands. A stillness too clean, too sterile. Like a hospital waiting room after the flatline. They didn't know what hit them, but they would, soon. By sunrise, the only backups left were the ones in their bowels. The Monday morning meeting was canceled, replaced with an all-hands marked mandatory video on. Cameras flipped on across a grid of pale, twitchy faces. Legal was there, so was PR. Even Jason crawled out of whatever ego cave he'd been hiding in, suddenly looking like a man who'd aged a decade in 4 hours. Nobody said it out loud, but the truth hung in the air like mold on drywall. They'd lost everything. Every audit trail, compliance log, transaction receipt, and configuration file dating back more than 30 days had been irreversibly purged by their own streamlined system. And now, the vultures were already circling. The first regulatory ping came from FINRA, then the SEC, then a data privacy watchdog in Europe. They'd had a few EU clients, just enough for GDPR to rear its terrifying head. At 10:14 a.m., a general counsel from legal finally asked the question everyone else was praying someone else would. Who wrote the scripts? Silence. Then Troy, in a voice that sounded like it had been rolled in regret and deep-fried, muttered, Erica, Erica Santos. Click. My name echoed through 3 floors of spreadsheets and corporate dread. A few managers dug through old emails. Someone pulled my Git commits. Someone else grabbed the signed-off Jira tickets and approvals. Slack logs showed the pull request with a +1 from Troy and a final green check from the IT director, who now reportedly had a twitch in his left eye and a standing appointment with an herbalist. By noon, my inbox had 6 new messages from various at the company com addresses, then 8 more, then 2 calls from blocked numbers, then a LinkedIn request from Jason with a groveling message. Would love to reconnect, maybe clear the air. Cute. I didn't answer. I didn't even open them. I just sat in my home office, coffee in hand, scrolling through Greystone's firewall logs like a woman flipping through a cookbook while the neighbor's house burned down next door. At 2:37 p.m., a message popped up in a private Slack I was still part of, courtesy of a friend who hadn't yet cut the cord. They're pulling legal into the script review, trying to prove sabotage. That made me laugh, not a big laugh, not a cackle. Just a soft content chuckle that felt like exhaling a weight I'd been carrying for years. There was no sabotage. What they found instead, in a neat folder titled Handover Exit Package, was a signed-off document, dated, timestamped, approved. It stated in clear, corporate-safe language that all scripts, automation tools, and system configurations prepared by Erica Santos have been reviewed and accepted by the IT department and management as final. No further modifications required. Legal read that line 4 times. It was ironclad, buried in the standard HR paperwork. They'd absorbed the liability the moment they cut me loose. No one had checked the fine print. No one ever does. By late afternoon, the company's stock took its first hit. Only 3%, enough to raise an eyebrow on CNBC's sidebar. But the real hemorrhage was internal. Their top 5 clients had been notified. Due to an unforeseen technical issue, we've experienced partial archival loss blah blah blah. Corporate poetry for we lost your money trail and can't prove we didn't. 2 hours later, word leaked to a trade publication. Headline, streamlined out of existence. Major finance firm suffers silent data wipe. They didn't name me, but the smart ones they knew, and me? I was sitting in the sun, laptop closed, watching Poe chase a sunbeam across the rug while Miles Davis played in the background. Serene, detached, untouchable. They wanted to reach me. But the version of me they fired, she doesn't take calls anymore. Greystone's lobby didn't have a chandelier, but the silence still sparkled. We were mid-presentation. Slide 12 of a 40-slide deck titled Automating Resilience, Lessons in Preventing Invisible Failures. Every exec in that boardroom was taking notes like I was reading the 10 Commandments from a USB stick. They didn't interrupt. They didn't blink. They just nodded, hard. My final slide read, systems should never rely on memory, especially human memory. Closed the laptop and waited. Applause, actual applause. Not the sarcastic kind from devs who have been awake for 48 hours, but genuine, relieved clapping from people who knew I'd just handed them a map through the minefield they'd been dancing blindfolded through for a decade. Someone handed me a fresh check. Retainer renewal. Double what they paid me last quarter, plus bonuses. Plus travel fees for a flight I didn't take because I preferred to work from home. And socks. Afterward, in the elevator, the CFO leaned over and asked casually, "Did you hear? Jason's on indefinite leave." I nodded. "Health issues?" She smirked. "Professional integrity implosion." Word as he hyperventilated during the regulator debrief and started shouting about flags and sabotage. We shared a quiet laugh as the elevator dinged. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The man had nuked his career with the same smug finger he used to fire me. By the time I got home, there was a new email in my zero-flag inbox. Subject, urgent recovery support needed from my former employer. Signed by their acting CTO. A desperate tone. It was polite but bleeding at the edges. "We're currently reassessing our infrastructure strategies. We'd appreciate a conversation regarding potential consulting engagement for data recovery and future-proofing." Future-proofing. Adorable. I forwarded it to my assistant with a note. Double the rate. Add a nausea clause. The clause reads, a 12% surcharge will be applied to any engagement involving infrastructure that caused public vomiting or reputational loss. They accepted. 30 minutes later, I opened the invoice template, updated the totals, included the legal paperwork, and attached a 2-page consulting scope that included system hardening, compliance guardrails, and yes, backup flag conditioning. I paused for a moment, just a breath. Poe was curled up in the window beside me, snoring like a small motorbike. Outside, the wind barely stirred. Inside, soft jazz played low like the background to someone else's movie. Someone who finally got the last word. I clicked send. Invoice delivered. Closure achieved. And somewhere in an office built on bullet points and bad decisions, someone just opened that email and tasted bile. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.